Let me give you a quote from a fella. This guy was talking about smoking, okay? And he was talking about smoking before anybody talked about it being unhealthy or anything like that. Here's what he called it. He said, smoking is loathsome to the eye, hateful to the nose, harmful to the brain, dangerous to the lungs, and in the black stinking fumes thereof, nearest resembling that horrible Stygian smoke of that pit which is bottomless. Sounds like he didn't like smoking. He further said this, here's why people smoke. Such is the force of that natural self-love that we cannot be content unless we imitate everything that our fellows do, and so prove ourselves capable of everything whereof they are capable. You know what he's talking about? Your friend does something stupid, so you've got to do something stupid too, so you smoke because your friend smokes. Whereof they are capable, like apes, counterfeiting the manners of others to our own destruction. Here's what he says about a man who smokes and his wife doesn't. The husband shall not be ashamed to reduce thereby his delicate, wholesome, and clear-complexioned wife to that extremity that either she must also corrupt her sweet breath therewith, or else resolve to live in a perpetual stinking torment. He said, if you smoke at home, your wife's either got to put up with a stinking smoke or start smoking herself to kind of be immune to it. You know who said that? His name was King James I of England. That is the King James of the King James Bible. What I'm going to talk to you about this morning is I'm going to talk to you about King James. And I'm going to talk to you about the translators of the King James Bible because they are overlooked. They are maligned. He is maligned. You know what's really sad is that the lost world is not near as cruel to King James as are the saved people. And the reason is saved people they've got an ulterior motive. They hate his Bible. In your Bibles, here's what it says in Ecclesiastes chapter 8. Where the word of a king is, there is power. And who shall say unto him, what doest thou? So the Bible says where the word of a king is, there is power. And I'll tell you some of the things about this guy. I'll give you some vital statistics. He was born in Edinburgh, Scotland, on June 19th, 1566. I got a message on this guy, and I'll tell you how I started. I started like this. I don't tell him who I'm talking about. I said, this man's mother's name was Mary. He was born destined to be a king, but he was born in very austere circumstances. They tried to kill him before he was born. They tried to kill him after he was born. And his name has 5 letters in it, and it starts with J and ends with S. Everybody thinks I'm talking about Jesus Christ. I'm talking about King James, because those things are true. We were over in Scotland. We've been there a couple times. And I was over in Scotland, and in Edinburgh Castle where he was born. Now, the guy was born destined to be the King of Scotland. Do you understand? And there's a huge room, very royal, very ornate. And in the corner of that room is a closet. Now, when I say closet, it's a walk-in closet. It might go from here to the second pew where Paul is sitting, and maybe from the wall over to the end of the pew. So it's a large closet, but it's a walk-in closet. That's what it was. He was born in a closet. And our Savior was born in a manger. So he was born in June 19th, 1566. Now, if you don't know this, he was actually King of Scotland first. And he became King James VI of Scotland. Now, what those numbers mean, very simply, is when a guy becomes king or queen, when the she becomes queen, if there's somebody that had their name already, then they're, like what this means is that in Scotland there had been 5 kings by the name of James. So when he became King James, he became King James VI of Scotland. He's identified as King James VI of Scotland, King James I of England, because when he became King of England, England had never had a king by the name of James. So you hear him referred to as the 6th or the 1st. Both of them are right. But I want you to notice the date. He became King of Scotland on July 29th, 1567. Look at the day he was born. June 19th, 1566. 13 months later, he became King of Scotland. Boy, can you imagine somebody saying, hey, what'd you get for your birthday? I get a cell phone. What'd you get? I get a Game Boy. What'd you get? I got a country. And the reason, usually those monarchies, they change leaders, they change kings or queens because of the death. Right now, you know, it's Queen Elizabeth. She has been the queen for, I think, 200 years. And it's the funniest thing, man. Prince Charles, I think he's older than I am, and he's still a prince. I got this horrible feeling. This guy, she's going to die. He's going to take the throne and go, I made it, and die. But so for a number of years, obviously he could not rule the country. It was ruled by regents. So he was King of Scotland when he was 13 years old. He was King James the First of England on March 24, 1603. And he died March 27th, 1625. Now, the charge that is brought against him is that he was a homosexual. That is a foul, lying, dishonest charge. And I'll tell you the saddest thing. It lay dormant for a number of years, and it was really, back in the 70s, it was encouraged here by the Moody Monthly. Back in 1970, I got a article, I got the Moody Monthly, and it was called King James and the Bible that Bears His Name, where they charged that he was homosexual. But I want to tell you about him. First off, his entire name was James Charles Stewart. Now, sometimes you'll see this, Stewart, like that, and that's how I used to think it was spelled. As you can spell it, it's an alternate spelling. But again, when I was in Scotland, over there, they say Stewart, like that. And the reason I point this out is because there are three remarkable things about this man. Number one, he was a king, correct? All right, he was the king, but he was also James. Does anybody know what James means? The supplanter. James is the guy, remember, he's the one that plucked the birthright from his brother Esau. All right, keep that in mind. And then his name was Stewart. What's a steward? A servant. This is a king who was a servant, who plucked something from somebody. This guy snatched something from somebody. And I'll tell you what that is about. I'll tell you how he became king. His mother was Roman Catholic. His mother was Mary, Queen of Scots. Now, don't confuse that with Bloody Mary of England. Bloody Mary of England was the Queen of England before Elizabeth took over. Elizabeth, when she died, she turned the throne over to James. The reason he became King of England is because he was a cousin, and so that made him a legitimate heir of the throne. But Mary, Queen of Scots, was the Queen of Scotland. She was a very wicked woman. She could have been a Bloody Mary. Over in Edinburgh, I don't have the pictures. I don't think I have the pictures on my phone. But in downtown Edinburgh, there's a large area. It's raised up about this big. It's circled. It's got brick, and then it's got a cross through the center of it. And there's a bronze plaque. And that was the place where Mary, the Roman Catholic, murdered anybody that was of the Church of England, Church of Scotland. Keep this in mind. We're getting snow. It's snowing out there. I'm leaving. Anyway, The Church of England is the Anglican Church. The Church of Scotland is the Presbyterian Church. You say, well, what's the difference? The Presbyterian Church was run by a bunch of presbyters. It was run by a council of men. The Anglican Church is basically, it is an English version of the Roman Catholic Church, and in which, instead of having a pope, the king or queen. The last time we were over there, we were in Scotland when Queen Elizabeth was visiting Scotland, and the guide told us an interesting thing. He said, when she crosses the border from England to Scotland, she becomes the head of the Queen of the Church of Scotland, of the Presbyterian Church, when she crosses into Scotland, and is not the head of the Anglican Church. So she was a Roman Catholic, and she murdered them. How bad? There's a graveyard where they killed these people, where they buried these people they killed. There's one large monument. The thing is probably about 10 feet wide. It probably goes about 10, 12 feet in. Probably goes about 12, 15 feet in the air. And it says beneath this are the remains of 18,000 people that Mary Queen of Scots murdered because they would not bow the knee to the Roman Catholic Church. So what happened is that she had her husband murdered. Well, her husband was murdered in front of her. There, the rumor is that she had it done. I don't know. There's also the rumor that they murdered him in front of her, hoping she would miscarry, because at that moment, at that time, she was expecting James. And so finally, she was so bad that the Scottish people took her off the throne. They didn't kill her, but look. They did it when this kid was only 13 months. They couldn't even wait. They couldn't wait until he grew up enough to take the country. So he became the king when he was 13 months old. But the country was ruled by regents. Now, one of the things about kings were notoriously illiterate. Okay? You say, what do you mean? They couldn't read, they couldn't write. You say, why? Why? Don't we say this? You can rise. Do you ever think about this? This is a country where we say, you can rise from poverty to become the President of the United States. Hey, we have now proven you can even come from Kenya and become the President of the United States. And I have to laugh at that because doesn't it sound noble? Where you can come from an austere start, just a poor little child, and you can become the President of the United States. I said, yeah, but you can't be a billionaire, a businessman, because the Republicans will stop you. But here's the thing. James... Here's why kings were illiterate. There was no reason to be literate. I'm king. Do you understand when you're king, there's no place to go up? Well, what am I going to be? King with 4 stars? You're the king. So they didn't have to learn how to read. They didn't have to learn how to write. They had an entire court that took care of that stuff. But this man, when his mother was taken off the throne, he was raised by 2 Presbyterians, and one of those guys was a disciple of Theodore Beza. And Theodore Beza is his 5th edition of the Greek New Testament that was used on your King James Bible. And so he was staunchly saved, Protestant. And this guy, he was known as being, here's how they described him. He was highly intelligent, he had an excellent memory, and he was an easy learner. He could speak English, Scottish. Now, of course, those would be pretty much foregone conclusion. He was from Scotland, and then, of course, he spoke English, spoke Latin, spoke Greek, French, Spanish, and Italian. I want to see if I have this written down. Yeah. Now, the guy was very saucy. He was, and I mean from a youth, when he knew he was royalty. And he really took his job serious, even when he didn't have the job. And this is what he said when he was 5 years old. When he was 5 years old, He's still not officially the king. He's officially the king, but he's not practically the king. Okay, he's not running the country. The assembly, the Scottish assembly that was making laws and making decisions for the nation, he told them this. He said, be careful of the decisions you make, because you will answer to God and to me afterwards. He's 5 years old. Listen to this. When he was 8 years old, he could read a chapter of the Bible in Latin. Now think about this. He's going to open up the Bible any place you want out of the Latin Bible. He'll read a chapter. A chapter. Then, in his head, translate it into French. Then translate the French into English. Now guys, what I'm telling you is this man was an intellect that we have not seen in the modern world. And he just does not get the press that he deserves. Now, I'm telling you about the king, okay? His mother was a staunch Roman Catholic. He rejected the Roman Catholic Church at age 11. He was a Presbyterian. Now, the fact is, he didn't like the Presbyterian Church. There are a couple of problems the guy had. Look, guys, everybody has problems, right? You know somebody you love, you respect, and you go, man, I like that guy, except for he spits on my floor. Or he does something, you know. And one of the things is that he believed, now first off, he did believe this. He believed in the divine right of kings. By that, I meant he thought that a king was an absolute ruler. You can even call it an absolute dictator. The difference is he believed that a king should be a benevolent ruler. Hitler was an absolute ruler who was a dictator. But if you have an absolute dictator who is benevolent, then you don't have near the problem. And the reason he didn't like the Presbyterian Church is because he was the head of the Presbyterian Church, but he didn't run it. It was run by a group of Presbyterians. He liked the Anglican Church because he was the number one man. And that's what he did. At age 22, get this, he debated a Jesuit by the name of James Gurdon. Now, let me explain about the Jesuits. People think Jesuits are these guys from the Roman Catholic Church that go around and kill Protestants. That is not true. Those are the Dominicans. The Catholic Church has, I don't know if they go all the way to 26, but each group in the Catholic Church starts with a different letter of the alphabet. The Anglican, or it's the Augustinians. I don't know what the B's are, C are, but the Dominicans are the foot soldiers of the Roman Catholic Church. When the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre happened in Spain or in France, it was the Dominicans that did the stabbing, killing. The Jesuits are the plainclothesmen of the Roman Catholic Church. They're the ones that will come in and say, "Oh, yeah, I'm saved, and I'm against Catholic Church." And they infiltrated, like they would put themselves. They go to Germany. You know, the state church in Germany was Lutheran, which is we called it when I was Catholic. We called it Catholics that flunked their Latin. But so you know what the Jesuits did? They portrayed themselves as Lutherans, got into the Lutheran colleges, and then began to teach people to be sympathetic to the Roman Catholic teachings. They did the very same thing in England. They got into the Anglican, and they had a pretty good. They had something going for them in their favor, because the Lutheran Church and the Anglican Church are really just a parallel to the Roman Catholic hierarchy. It's the same type thing. But so this Jesuit. Now you understand, here's what you've got to see. This is an amazing thing, guys. I don't know if you realize what God did with this king. But you have Mary, and she's a Roman Catholic. That's his mother. And you have Charles the First, who was his son, and he went back to the Roman Catholic Church. And then you got King James the First, who was a Protestant. You know what this guy was? He was a parenthesis in history when our Bible came into being. It is. You say, "Wow, what a coincidence!" Yeah, if you believe in coincidences. If you don't believe in coincidences, God did a very great thing here. Okay, and so he was very against the Roman Catholic Church, and that's where James comes in. Right? This is about the king, but this is James the supplanter. You say, what did he do? He plucked England and Scotland from the clutches of the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church was a great power. See if I've got it. I got something else here. Maybe a couple of minutes ago there. Maybe I'll just give it to you now. Yeah, we'll get to it. But he would openly debate the Roman Catholics. He was against the Roman Catholic Church. In fact, you know what he did? He wrote the Pope a letter and offered to lead him to Christ and let him join the Church of England. I haven't heard that kind of somebody smacked the Pope like that since Trump did it. Now, by the time he was 28 years old, he'd almost died in the womb. He had been kidnapped twice. He had resisted 3 attempts to kidnap him and fled from 5 plots to kidnap him. And here's what happened. Most of these plots were perpetrated by the Roman Catholic Church. And the idea was the Roman Catholic Church knew they couldn't go kill the King of England. I mean, if they killed the King of England, they're going to have a major problem. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to kidnap him and force him to either come off the throne and let his son come on and become a Roman Catholic Roman Catholic, or to persuade him to become a Roman Catholic. So the Roman Catholic Church was behind most of the plots that were behind him. Here's what they said about him. He faced danger and difficulties with energy and courage. Some of the things that he did. He wrote a thing, you might make a note of this. He wrote a work. He was one of the most educated monarchs. And he wrote a book called The Basilicon Doron. And what that is that's called the kingly gift. Now, do you know what an absolute dictator has to do to please his people? Nothing. He's an absolute dictator. Right? And this guy believed in an absolute monarchy. And the Basilicon Doron that he wrote, he actually wrote to his son Henry. Henry was his oldest son, and he was destined to become the King of England. Tell you what happened to Henry. He died. I'll give you an age here in a second. Henry died when he was 18 years old, and so Charles became the king. And here's what King James wanted. He wanted to make sure that he prepared his son to be a good king. Now, what do you think a dictator is going to tell you? You want to see this. I don't know why our news media is not honest and does not admit that North Korea is not a republic. It is not a country. It is a kingdom. And the guy running it right now, his father was king before him, and his grandfather was king before him. They pass it down just like, and if it was done in any kind of a democracy or any other Western country, the news media would be screaming about it. Look at this kingdom. But that's what it was. Okay, now look at the Korean dictators, the North Korean dictators. You know what this guy does? He takes some of his military men and literally ties them over the end of a cannon and then shoots it. I mean, a 120 millimeter cannon and just blows the guy in half. So, you understand, you know what his dad told him? If anybody gives you static, you kill him. That's an absolute dictator who is a vile man. Listen, you know what this guy did? He believed that though the king was absolute, he believed that the king was the servant to the people and that he should be good to his subjects. And when he wrote the Basilicon Doron, you know what the very first thing that he instructed his son to be? The king's relationship to God. He said, if you're going to be a good king, you've got to have a good relationship to God. The second thing is the king's duties in his office. The third thing is the king's manners and relationships with his subjects. Now that was his manners and relationships with his subjects, not tell them how to make them knuckle under, torture them, kill them, don't let them give any static. He wrote this so that his son would be a benevolent king. I told you he's called homosexual. He hated the effeminate. The guy was a hunter. You guys hunters? Okay, you know what this guy did? when he was down in England and when he was living in London, there was a huge woods. He hunted it bare of deer. He hunted all the deer. And we're talking bow and arrow, okay? You guys ever try that? Anyway, he go with bow and arrow. Now he had a couple of physical problems. His tongue was too large for his mouth, and so he would tend to like this, and he drooled. And his legs were bowed. And the guy loved to hunt so much that he'd make him put him on a horse and tie him on the horse so he wouldn't fall off when he went hunting. Then he went out in the woods and he shot so many deer. When he finally cleaned the woods out of deer, he said, "Go restock it." And they brought more deer in. He hated the effeminate. Here's what he said. He instructed his son. But especially eschew to be effeminate in your clothes, in perfuming, preening, or such like. He told his son, don't be effeminate. But guys, a queer does not say that. All right? And make not a fool of yourself in disguising or wearing long your hair or nails, which are but excrements of nature. He said your hair and nails are the same as when you go to the bathroom. So don't wear your hair long. Don't wear your nails long. He said this, guard. In other writings, he said guard against corrupt lead as book language and pen and ink horn terms, and last of all, mignard and effeminate ones. Now, what he said is this. You ever have a guy talk to you? You know legalese? The party of the first part. It says to the party of the second part that the party of the first part will never betray his sacred duties to the party of the second part, and the party of the second part, the party of the first part does, violate that contract. Then the party of the second... get out of here. I don't know if you guys realize this. I do not know if you realize this. Guys, you really should do this. You should read the Constitution of this country. You can read it inside of 30 minutes, and you will understand every word. You will understand the words. It is not a lawyer's document that you will look at and read it and scratch your head and go, okay, what does this mean to me? Our Constitution is amazing. It is an amazing thing. And he said, when you talk to people, he said, don't talk academics. Let me tell you something. I write books. And on this subject, I do a lot of studying and read the scholars and everything. When I write my books, and I made this decision with the first one called The Understandable History of the Bible, there are two audiences out there to get my books. Now, I can't write to two audiences, so I've got to pick one. Let me tell you what those two audiences are. There's academia. Academia, that's the college professors. That's the guys who have gone to seminary and had 7 and 8 years of learning and more. And they go around the world and study in exotic places. And they got, more letters behind their name than there are in the alphabet. And here's the thing. If you address them, here's what you'll get. They'll come by and they'll go, "Oh, Dr. Jeremiah, that treatise you did on the second aorist tense of the Greek in Second Corinthians, it was really a work of literary art." And you know who the other group is? It's you, common people. If you address academia, those guys slap you on the back, say, "Good job, you did a great job," and you know what you guys go? You hear the two of them talking, going, "What in the world are they talking about?" You get nothing. You better remember this something. Now remember this, guys. The Lord, and I said it the other day, it says that the common people heard God gladly. Heard the Lord Jesus Christ gladly. But here's the problem. If you direct your works to the common man, you guys get something and can do something with it. The comments I get the most are people say, "You say it so I can understand it." So I chose 30 years ago to aim at the pew, not at the podium in some university. I don't care about academia. But here's the problem. If you aim at the pew, two things happen. Number one, you guys take it and do something with it. And academia hates your guts because you ignored them. And there are TR men who can give you some good stuff on defending the TR, but they hate my guts because I don't address them. And they come to my meetings. And they'll try to start talking scholar, and I don't do it, and then they leave, and then they say something bad about me. But I don't care because you know what they're going to do for God? Absolutely nothing. you're going to do something for God. He didn't turn to the nobles of Scotland or the Presbyterian Church, but to the common man. That's what he did. This is an amazing thing. He is the guy that united England, Ireland, and Scotland. Now, what I mean is, you guys have heard about the British Empire? Yes, sir. Okay, this is the guy that built the foundation. These are 3 independent countries when he became King of England. This is the guy that united the king of the countries of England, Ireland, and Scotland. And you know what he had to do when he got him? He had to give him a flag. Now, I'm going to ask you, but I won't ask you because you'll give me the wrong answer. And I told you I will not ask you a question to try to get you to give me the wrong answer so I can embarrass you. But if I said, what is the flag of England, you would say, you know, that Union Jack, that blue and red. That is not the flag of England. Let me show you. If you're ever in England, this is the flag of England. The flag of England is nothing but a white sheet with a red cross on it. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about, see, when you see the flag that you see now, that's not the flag of England, that's not the flag of Scotland, that's not the flag of Ireland, that is the flag of the United Kingdom. This is the flag of England. Do you know what the flag of Scotland looks like? I found this information some years ago. I was in Scotland, and I picked up a book. It was an old book on King James, and it gave this information that he actually was in on the design of the flag for the British Empire. And the flag of Scotland is basically, you could say it's a blue flag with a white X on it. This has got a white flag with a red cross. This, the flag of Scotland, is a solid blue flag with a white X on it. So you know what he did? He took that flag and superimposed it on that flag. And you know what he came up with? He came up, well, I can just do it over here. I'll do it. He came up with this. That's the English flag, superimposed over top of the Scottish flag, the white X in background. That's actually... Now, I got to tell you, I have a mystery here, and my mystery is that this flag, and I'm going to put these in the wrong place, but it has these. I don't know what those are, but when you see that flag, what you're looking at, you're not looking at a flag, you're looking at two flags. You're looking at the flag of Scotland with the flag of England superimposed, because this guy put them together. You say, what about the Irish? They were too drunk to care, I imagine. But anyway, so and here's the thing: this flag has flown around the world. Do you ever hear that term, that thing they talk about the British Empire, and they say the sun never sets on the British Empire? That does not mean that the British Empire would rise like the sun and never go down. What it meant was, and I'm reading a book right now on the wars. I'm telling you, the British were very imperial. I know you guys think that the Americans, I'm telling you, the British, they would go out and conquer a country because they wanted in the empire. They were very, very imperial. But what that meant was that at some point during the day, in 24 hours of the day, the sun was always shining on some part of the British Empire. So when they said the sun never went down the British Empire, that meant there was never a time when the sun was not shining on some part of the globe that was part of the British Empire. All right, here's his physical problems. He was weak of legs, had to be supported when he walked. He had limited use of his hands. He used them for hunting, which required that he have a secretary or chamberlain write for him. He suffered from porphyria. Let me write that for you. And porphyria was called the royal's disease. For some reason, it seemed to be prominent in the royal families. Guys that may have been from inbreeding. I don't know if those guys, if that had something to do with it. But and that was where he was. It said he was weak and quite often bedridden. In fact, his bedroom was his office. He used his bedroom as an office. One of the things that you realize is that that's what these guys did. Their bedroom was we think of a bedroom as that's where you go lay down and sleep, but their bedroom was it was a chamber. His bedroom became his office, and he was surrounded by courtiers who waited and served their king. He did not sleep well, and once awakened, had great difficulty regaining his sleep. He would have a courtier, usually sleeping in the same room as a bodyguard, read to him until he dozed off again. He suffered bouts of pain that sometimes left him delirious. He suffered from an overlarge tongue, which caused him to drool frequently and slurp loudly when he drank. So, to be honest, physically he was kind of repulsive. Okay? He was not, this guy, we're not talking about Schwarzenegger, but he was, in here, he was John Wayne. I mean, this guy was, he was a man. This is what his personal attributes. Bishop Godfrey Goodman said this: "Here unto you may add the carriage and disposition of King James. Truly, I did never know any man of so great an appreciation, of so great love and affection. A man so truly just, so free from all cruelty and pride." Can you imagine this? Free from all cruelty and pride, such a lover of the church, and one who had done so much good for the church. Sir Henry Wotton, W-O-T-T-O-N, he wrote this of James: "There appears a certain a natural goodness verging on modesty. Among his good qualities, none shines more brightly than the chasteness of his life." Chasteness, that is moral purity. Can I give you a thought? There's a couple things that are remarkable. I don't mean there's something that just that they happened while he was king. Two things that are absolutely remarkable. Do you know why there's a lot of times there's a battle over a throne when a king dies? It's not just the brother and the younger brother fighting over it, but it's the next guy in line and a bunch of the king's bastard children that he had with some chambermaid. Okay? Those kings were totally immoral. They'd have 2 or 3 mistresses, and then they'd have kids, and these guys would all say, "Well, the king is my dad, but the chamberlain's my mom." And people would go, "Well, we don't like the king's son. You've got royal blood in you. We'll make you the king." Do you know that he never had a mistress and he had no illegitimate children? He was totally moral. He married his wife and was true to her, and every one of his children were born by her. Now, you say, "Well, what's the big deal?" No, you understand, that's remarkable for that time. Yes, sir. The second thing that's remarkable is, during his reign, England never fought one war. You talk about a man of peace. That guy was a man of peace. He brought peace. While he was king, there was the Morocco War, where 220,000 people died. There was the 80 Years' War going on, where up to 2 million people died. And in the Ming Dynasty, 25 million people died. Those people died. Those are wars that were going on while he was king. And if you got any kind of history about England, what is the main country that England was always fighting? France. Can you imagine England and France being at peace? But they didn't fight with France. They didn't fight on their own island. They didn't fight with Germany. They didn't fight with Normandy. Normandy was a separate country at that time. This guy, he had no illegitimate children because he was totally and completely moral, and he was a man of peace. England fought nobody. There were no wars during his reign. In fact, here's what it says. Among his good qualities, none shines more than his chasteness of his life, which he has preserved without stain down to the present time, contrary to the example of almost all his ancestors, who distributed the king with a great number of their bastards which they left. What that writer's saying, that's that Sir Henry Wotton, he said everybody before him, their family was immoral. Well, they were kings. They were immoral Roman Catholics. And he said Scotland was filled with a bunch of illegitimate children from the line of Stuart. But he had none, because he was a moral man. James' reputation for learning, for piety, for good nature, and for liberality. Now, liberality, guys, you know, today you talk liberal, and let's face it, man, a liberal is not a good guy. But it's a Bible word. And you know what a liberal was? A liberal was a giver. We talk today about, you see a guy down at the interstate, we'll work for food, he won't. But anyway, help me. And we are all pretty much liberal givers. But you got to understand that we're talking about times when if you were poor, you just died. That's just it. You're just going to die. The government wasn't giving you any money. If you had nobody on the inside or no way to work, you just went to the poorhouse. And if you didn't do that, you died outside. But this man was very liberal. That's what the Bible talks about, a liberal man, somebody that gives to others. Now listen to this. This is Inderwick, this guy. As to his personal character, it is, I think, also justice to say, he was personally a man of good moral character. A quality which was probably much indebted to the strict and careful training he received from his Presbyterian tutors. And that is probably true. In these years, before he became king, before he actually grew up and took over as king of Scotland, I told you he was raised by two tutors. One was Peter Young. Peter Young was the student of Theodore Beza, and those Presbyterians taught morality. They taught salvation by grace. They taught morality, and this man was a moral man. I'll guarantee you, at that time, the king of Spain had illegitimate children. The king of France had illegitimate children. Whoever was running Germany had illegitimate children. This guy had none. He was history unto himself. Robert Chambers says this. He was a monarch whose character was good. He was very much beloved of his people. He was no coward, and at various times in his life he displayed considerable nerve in facing danger. So the guy was not a wimp. He was not effeminate. He was against being effeminate. He was very moral. Here's a sad thing. This is the guy that the world's looking for. Now, I'm not talking about the Antichrist, but isn't this the guy that they want for an example? Guys, do you know what this nation wants, the United States? Let me tell you what it wants. It wants the fruit of Christianity without Jesus Christ. If you go to the government in some way and say, hey, I got this thing. Because right now they're saying, people are taking drugs and they're beating their wives and guys won't work. And the whole country is like that. And you say, hey, I got this thing that, this gets men working. They stay true to their wives. They don't molest their children. They get off the booze and the drugs. And the government go, yeah, that's great. What is it? Well, just let us lead them to Jesus Christ. And they go, oh, no, we don't want that. But they want the fruit, don't they? They want the fruit. And that's where this country is. And James was the guy everybody's looking for. Here's what Hugh Walpole reveals. He had large, prominent blue eyes, and they stared at the person with whom he talked as though he could read all secrets. Now, one of the problems that he had, I'll be honest with you, you know what he was? He was a little bit of a narcissist. You say, what is that? That's what Obama is. Obama is a self-lover. That's what a narcissist is. Obama really thinks that the greatest man walking the planet right now is a guy named Barack Obama. He thinks I just say it and that makes it true. How many times have we seen, here's Muslims killing people everywhere, and he goes, no, it's not really a problem. And he thinks if I say it, that makes it true. Honest, King James thought that. When he was at peace, Europe was having wars, the continent, and so he would write, kind of like these two countries were fighting, and he'd write them a letter saying, you guys, you ought to stop, blah, blah, blah. And he thought, well, that'll stop it. And they'd read his letter and they'd go back and kill each other. Because he really was a narcissist to a degree. But I'll tell you another thing was, he really loved people. And he wanted to help people. Now, mind you, again, the guy was king. He didn't have to help anybody. And as a rule, kings and queens were not known for being liberal or benevolent. They didn't help people. But he did. And because he literally gave away most of his wealth, he was always in need of money. He was always straining for money. And here's what it says. On his propensity to favoritism, the only excuse for his blind indulgence to the objects of his affection must be derived from his boundless good nature, which overflowed upon all who approached him, and rendered it a moral impossibility for him to refuse any request urged with importunity. What that meant was that, you know what he was? Here's how we say it. He's a soft touch. If you came and said, listen, I need some money, and he'd probably go, I'm not going to do this. And you say, well, here's my problem. And by the time you're done, he's pulling his wallet out and giving you his money. He was a soft touch. But that was and it was a rare thing, because he was a very benevolent man. King James was regarded by those of his own time. You know what they called him? The British Solomon. That is not a title that was bestowed on him hundreds of years after he was, something like one of us King James guys calling him that to try to elevate him. He didn't need elevated. The people of his time called him the British Solomon. He was wise not only in politics and academics, but in theology. He was devoutly interested in the Word of God. He made it clear that he wanted the holy Word of God to be in the hands of the people. All right, question. The people. Academia, common man. Which one's the people in? He was a king of the common man. And I'm going to tell you something, guys. That's why they hate him. They hate him because he was a king of the common man. He was not a king that was just, going to talk to all the royalty and rub shoulders with them. He wanted the Word of God to be in the hands of the people and not chained to pulpits or hoarded in cellars to be read only by Greek scholars. He said, I want the Bible in the hands of the common man, not just the colleges. Oh, brother, they hated him for that. Here's what he said. This is what he wrote in the Basilicon Doron. This is what he wrote to Henry. It was later transferred to Charles because Henry died. Charles didn't listen to it. Charles ended up getting his head cut off. Oliver Cromwell threw him off the throne. He was going to go back to be just like his mother. He was going to start killing every Protestant he could and force England back into the Catholic Church. This is what in the Basilicon Doron. Here's what he exhorted his son to. Quote, keep your body clean and unpolluted while you give it to your wife, whom to only it belongs. For how can you justly crave to be joined to a virgin if your body be polluted? I say it this way, guys. Do you know what a virgin is? That is a woman that no man wants to date and every man wants to marry. Now, I'm sorry. I'm not talking about in Christianity, but in the lost world, no guy. They all want to date a loose woman. But when it comes time to get married, they want a pure woman. And what he's saying is, he said, what are you doing? You want a clean woman, but you don't think you have to be clean? Keep your body clean and unpolluted while you give it to your wife, whom to only it belongs. For how can you justly crave to be joined to a virgin if your body be polluted? Why should the one half be clean and the other defiled? Now wait a minute. This is a man saying you should keep your body for your wife only, right? Now you believe he was writing that, and he had a man on the side? He had a man lover on the side? Never. Never. Why should the one half be clean, the other defiled? And suppose I know fornication is thought but a venial sin by most of the world. Yet remember well what I said in my first book regarding conscience, that every sin and breach of God's law, not according as the vain world esteems it, but as God, judge and maker of the laws, accounts of the same. You know what he said? He said, there's no mortal and venial sins. You know, how many people do something wrong because they go, well, it's not a bad thing. You know, it's just a little lie. I didn't kill anybody. He said, they all violate the law. The guy was an amazing man. Here's what he said, be not ashamed to keep clean your body, which is the temple of the Holy Spirit, notwithstanding all vain allurements to the contrary. He said, come on, guys. You know what he knew his son's going to do? He knew his son was going to get married. And one day, being married, he's going to see another woman going, wow. And you know what his dad said? Keep your body clean, boy. No matter what you're being allured to do, no matter what is drawing you off, keep your body clean. Think not, therefore, that now listen to this. Think not, therefore, that the highness of your dignity diminisheth your faults, much less giveth you a license to sin. But by the contrary, your fault shall be aggravated according to the height of your dignity. You know what he's saying? He's saying, just because you're the king, don't think that means that if you commit a sin, it's not as bad. He said, the fact is that because you're king, it's worse. Man was tremendous. Make your court and company to be pattern. Now listen to this. He says, when you pick men, all right, what are you going to do? What are you going to pick? Well, you know what Hitler picked? He picked a bunch of guys like him. What did Obama pick? He picked a bunch of people like him, right? Okay. Here's what he said. When you pick your court. Now let me explain what a court was. That court, you think of it today kind of like the cabinet, except it was broader. It encompassed more people. But here's what you have to remember. This was a class society. Okay? You had royalty. You had the peasants, if you want to call them that. But along with the royalty, he had a court. And it's like this. I'm the king. And I make Jeremiah part of my court. You know what happens? He's not working the fields anymore. He is now an insider. He is now going to benefit financially. His kids are going to have a better life. His living is going to be better because he's in the court. You understand? So you can understand the sleazy kind of politicians that want it in the court. That's what happens right now. Listen, I'll pull some votes for you if you'll make me part of the cabinet so that I can get my hand filled. Listen to what he told his son. This is the kind of men. He said, here's what I want you to, when you fill your court, here's what you go after. Make your court and company to be a pattern of godliness and all honest virtue to all the rest of the people. Be careful to prefer the gentlest natured. Now let me ask you a question. Do you think that Stalin, when he picked his followers, said, I want the gentle guy? You know what they said? I want you to kill his mom if I tell him to. Isn't that right? He said this, it is not enough to be a good king. By the thraldom of good laws, well executed to govern his people, if he joins therewith a virtuous life in his own person and in the person of his court and company, by his good example, alluring his subjects. Now remember talking about a woman allures you? He's saying you have to live such a good life that you allure your people. To what? Alluring his subjects to the love of virtue and the hatred of vice. This man believed that the king should be, he was the pinnacle of the law, correct? He thought he should be the pinnacle of morality. You know, that is the problem. The problem is you get a dictator, he is the pinnacle of the law, but they're not always the pinnacle of morality. This guy thought that he should be the king should be, he was already by his throne, he was already the pinnacle of the law. He should be the pinnacle of morality and virtue. That everybody in his country ought to say, I want to be good like my king. Bill Clinton would not have read the book. And this example in your own life and person. See this? He never divorced the royalty from the common people. He never ever said, because you are royal, you can indulge in things that are wrong. He said, you are royal, but you are just like the people down there. Guys, that's what's amazing about it. And this, in your own life and person, in the government of your court, and followers in all goodness and virtue. Having your mind decked and enriched so with all virtuous qualities. That therewith ye may worthily rule your people, have a double care for the ruling of your own servants. He became known as the most educated sovereign in Europe. He was the most educated, that's why he's called the British Solomon. In fact, I always like to say it this way, he kind of invented audiobooks. He was literate and could read, but he so loved books. He loved books. He said, if I could spend my days, if I wasn't a king, I would just want to live in a library. That's a paraphrase, okay? But here's what he would do. When he was eating, he'd have a guy behind him reading a book. All the time he was eating, and anytime he's doing something, there was a guy reading a book. He had an audio book on. Because he was always getting stuff in. Okay, I'll tell you about his marriage. He got married on August 20th. (1589). Her name was Anne, and she was the second daughter of Frederick the Second, King of Denmark. I won't go into his children, but he had 1, 2, 3. He had about 4 of them that died in their youth. He had one die at 18. That was Henry. His daughter Elizabeth lived to be 65. His daughter Margaret died at age 2. Charles, who became Charles I, died at age 49. Robert died at 4 months. He had a stillborn child in 1603. He had a daughter, May, who died at age 2. And he had a daughter, Sophia, who died at age 1 day old. All right, now, I told you he was king, and he was James. He stole the kingdom from the Roman Catholic Church, but he was a steward. Say, what was he a steward of? In other words, it was his job to take care of things. Well, he took care of his people. This is what the personal goals and achievements. He sought to teach his son to be a good king and a good man. He protected his people through the counterblast of tobacco. The counterblast of tobacco is a tract that he wrote that I read from. Now, here's the amazing thing about that. He said this. Remember, he said, smoking is loathsome to the eye. Well, that would be pretty, burns my eyes. Hateful to the nose. Okay, it makes sense. You sound like the smell. He said this, harmful to the brain, dangerous to the lungs. Nobody knew that. Nobody knew that. See, when I say that, you guys go, well, we know that. Medicine did not know that. This guy said it was bad for the brain and bad for the lungs. And I'll guarantee you, when he said that, somebody probably read it and goes, well, everybody knows it's not hard. There's nothing about smoking that hurts the lungs or the brain. They hadn't discovered it yet. That's how ahead of his time he was. And those words came from his counterblast to tobacco. He was trying to get his people not to do that. He sought to propagate the gospel. You know what he considered himself a member of? Now get this. He was raised a Presbyterian. When he became king of England, he became head of the Anglican Church, the Church of England. You know what church he considered himself a member of? He considered himself a member of the pre-500 AD primitive church. He believed that he was from the church. In other words, he didn't sign off to Presbyterian or Anglican. He believed he was from those guys you read about in the first 5 centuries in history. Get this. Was he a Roman Catholic? He banished Roman Catholic priests and the Jesuits from England. He pulled no punches in his argument with the Pope and Roman Catholics. I told you he united England, Ireland, and Scotland. During his years, I told you there was absolute peace. There were no wars whatsoever. Basilican Dorian, that book, The Kingly Gift, was translated into numerous languages and read throughout Europe. Now, can you imagine a king who is also a famous author? You say, well, why was he a famous author? Because of what he said. You know what he said? He said the king ought to be good. The king ought to be good to his people. The king ought to make sure that his court is a picture of morality and virtue. You understand how foreign that was? That was absolutely foreign. That was as foreign as when you read, we the people, and the man has the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Do you understand how foreign that was? That's why they called the establishment of this country an experiment. I don't know if you guys realize this, but when John Adams became the president, the second president, we make a big deal about George Washington. Do you know what was amazing when John Adams became the second president of this country? That's the first time in history that a nation changed its leaders without one of them dying or a revolution. Countries change their leaders because one of them died and his kid took over, or the people overthrew him and killed him and put somebody else on the throne. If you told all of Europe before we did it, hey, how about everybody just go and vote, and that's how you pick your ruler? Right. That's why they called our form of government an experiment, and it is the oldest form of government on the planet today. Our 200 and some years, no nation has kept one constitution for as long as we have. In a time when monarchs were illiterate by design, James was one of the most educated men of his time. He designed the flag. He established, get this, Plymouth colony came over in the Mayflower all came over in 1620. But this place was discovered. I know the Europeans came over in 1492. And the Spanish guys, they always hear about these greedy white men. It was the Spanish that were after gold. It really was. But in 1620, he sent those guys over. It said he established the first Christian colony, Jamestown, Virginia. He sent people over here not to take advantage of the Indians, not to steal the land. He sent over to be a pilgrim and missionaries to the people that were here. That was the foundation. Isn't it funny that there were people here before 1620, but when we think about the establishment of the United States, we go back to the Pilgrims. We go back to 1620. His mother was Roman Catholic. His son was Roman Catholic. He was a parenthesis in history when God produced the King James Bible. That is an amazing thing, guys, and it cannot be a coincidence. Monarchs were known for their promiscuity, with a string of illegitimate claimants to their throne left in the wake. James had no illicit relationships and left no illegitimate children behind. James insisted on jury trials. Wow, that's a novel idea. You say, well, why would they do that before that? It kind of went like this. Off with his head! That's how it went, guys, because that's what a dictator can do. But he believed in jury trials. James exalted womanhood and the sanctity of marriage. Guys, if there's ever been another injustice, it is that our society, this American society, is having a war on women, and women need to be liberated. Do you understand that every heathen society is hard on women? All heathen societies. The woman is a piece of property. She's the bearer of burdens. She doesn't count. And it is Christianity that has exalted women. This man exalted womanhood and the sanctity of marriage. He held the institution so highly, now get this, that he spent 15 days in prayer and meditation before he married Anne of Denmark. That's what you married guys did, right? Yeah. All right, now wait a second. Sounds like a good guy, right? Why would anybody hate him? Why would anybody hate such a good man? Okay, here were his enemies. Power seekers. In any kingdom are those who wish to usurp the authority of the rightful ruler to their own benefit. There were numerous intrigues designed to place someone other than James on the throne. There were power seekers. There was the Roman Catholics. They wanted to change the throne from a Protestant throne back to a Roman Catholic throne. But not just that. You had people that wanted some way to get into the court. Okay? The Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church wanted England back in the fold of Rome and would stop at nothing to achieve this goal. Let me tell you one of the lies that is told about this man. We are told there's no evidence of this in history. These guys just got to make it up. I'm going to show you 3 dates. These are very, very important dates. 1603, 1604, and 1605. Now, that's pretty close together, isn't it? You say, what happened in 1603? He became James I, King of England. Now, I have heard this said, I have heard it said with absolutely no historical documentation, that the only reason he said you can have the New King James, you can translate the New Bible, was because he was pressured into it. Can I ask you a question? A 5-year-old that tells a bunch of grown men, you better be careful of what decision you make because you have to answer to God and me. You think that guy, when he grows up, is going to be pushed around? But do you know when he made the decision for the King James translation? Look, he came to the throne. He came to the throne in March of 1603. He made the decision for the King James Bible. It was one of the very first decisions he made as king. Because he wanted that Bible. Because he wanted a Bible in the language of his people. And I got news for you guys. That was a dangerous thing. I'll tell you something. The devil is not afraid. If you have a Bible in this church and it's chained to this pulpit, he's not afraid of that. He's not afraid of a preacher with a Bible. He's not afraid of me with a Bible. He's afraid of you with a Bible. The devil is afraid of the doctor and the steel worker and the gas station attendant and the housewife and the house painter. He's afraid of the common people. You know why? Because you're going to take it everywhere. So, the Roman Catholic Church had to put a stop to this Bible. This is what happened in 1605. I don't think I... All right. Let me tell you this. On November 5th, this might be a date you want to remember. November 5th, 1605. In November 5th, 1605, to this day, November 5th is known as, what do they call it, the Gunpowder Plot Day. And they have a little ditty they do in England, remember the 5th of November. And here's what happened. Just before, November 5th was the day that Parliament was going to be in session and the King was going to address Parliament. You know how Congress gets together in the Capitol, President's in the White House, Supreme Court is in another building. But you ever hear what a joint session of Congress? That's where all of Congress, plus the 9 Supreme Court justices, plus the President, usually like at the State of the Union speech, okay? That's when the whole government is in one building. Woo! If they could fly a plane into that building at that moment, they'd decapitate our entire government. Okay? Parliament was going to be in session. It was going to open session on November 5th, 1605. The king was going to address Parliament. There were some Roman Catholic members of Parliament, and one of them got a letter saying, don't be there. Don't show up for the opening of Parliament. Well, he was a Roman Catholic, but he was also a loyal Englishman. And he took that letter to the authorities, and they said, we better check it out. So here's what they did. They went downstairs below Parliament, and they went into a room, and they found a guy there by the name of Guy Fawkes. Oops. Guy Fawkes was a servant of a guy named Henry Garnet. Oh. Do you know who Henry Garnet was? He was a Jesuit priest. And they found Guy Fawkes in the basement of Parliament standing next to a pile of faggots. Now, faggots were something that you burn. But really, guys, you know what a faggot is? It's a piece of wood. That's the definition. The definition is a piece of wood. And he was standing next... Now, you guys know what a fuse is? You light it and it burns down. Okay, they didn't call it fuse. They called it slow match. Because you lit it, and then it slowly burnt to where it was going. And here's what they find. Down this room, can you imagine you open up... Here's this guy. Oh, hi. And there's a pile of wood with a fuse gone into it. And they removed the wood and found 36 barrels of gunpowder. What Fawkes' job was to do, his Roman Catholic Jesuit master, Fawkes was going to wait until the king and all of Parliament were opening. He was going to light off the gunpowder. It was going to blow up everybody that was leading England. The Roman Catholic Church was then going to reinstall, they were going to put his son on the throne and make it a Roman Catholic country again. So you see what happened? In 03, he came to the throne. In '04, he signed his own death certificate by saying, I'm going to get a new Bible in English. The Catholic Church said that would be the worst thing that ever happened to us. And it was. So in '05, they tried to kill him. So to this day, now guys, let me tell you about the power of the power of the screen. You know what the power of the screen is? Movies. You know what we believe? We believe anything a movie shows us. And there was a movie some years ago. Now to this day, here's what they do. England, every November 5th, it's called, I know what it's called Guy Fawkes Day. And they would make statues of him, or like straw men, and burn them. They burn him in effigy. That's what it's called. And they would celebrate that the Roman Catholic Church failed to murder their king and turn them into a Roman Catholic country. That is what Guy Fawkes is about. But a number of years ago, there was a movie that came out of Hollywood, simply, I think it was called The. And it's set in modern times today, and the hero of it wears a mask of Guy Fawkes. And in the end of it, he blows up Parliament. Because Parliament has become dictatorial and he's freeing the people. And so from that movie to this day, you see the Guy Fawkes mask now associated with a good thing. Isn't that right? So Hollywood has taken history and turned it completely around. The Bible predicted that in Isaiah. It said good will be called evil and evil will be called good. Guy Fawkes is evil. This is a million mask march. Guys are all over with Guy Fawkes masks. And people wear that mask. It's like, I'm a hero now. It's like Robin Hood. I'm fighting for the people. Guy Fawkes wasn't fighting for the people. He was going to murder a bunch of people for the Roman Catholic Church. All right. Can't stop here. This is the main guy. This is the number one evil man. His name was Anthony Weldon. Now, let me ask you guys something. You guys are Navajo, right? Right? And, from my limited knowledge, I know Apaches and Comanches and Cherokees and Pimas and Nez Perce, etc. I say Indians. You say, no. We're Navajo, they're Apache, they're Comanche, they're Cherokee. Correct? What I see one race, you see the tribe. Understand this something, guys. You know, we talk about Indians being in tribes and Africans being in tribes. Don't you understand everybody came from tribes? I'm Romanian. Okay, what do you think the Romanians were doing before the Bible got there? They were just like the Germans and just like the French, all run around in tribes, bashing each other's brains out, and doing every other thing that any tribe ever did. Then the gospel came up into Europe, and you know what those guys said? Hey, this tribal thing don't work too well. Let's try nations and let's have the Lord. But where I don't see a difference, you guys see a difference. Well, you might look at white people and say they're all white people, but they're not. Let me tell you something. You know who's killing black people in Africa today? Not white people. Black people. Why? Two different tribes. And if you see if I could stand two white guys up here, and you would see two white guys, you'd see no difference. And I'd say this guy's from England and this guy's from Scotland, and you go, okay, so what? Same thing. No, they're not. The Scots were very low on the social register. I mean, Brits are tick, tick. You know, I love those guys. I'll say, let's have a wall. But you know, that's how the Scots are. They approach everything like the British. The British are, listen, the British are very high and regal and royal. Scots are like, they're like the slums, the white trash. All right? And that's how they looked at them. This is what Anthony Weldon. Now keep this in mind. Let me tell you what Anthony Weldon was. He was this. What is that? What was he? Yeah, he was a Scot. And you know what he did? When he came down from Scotland and became King James, he brought most of his Scottish cabinet, with his court. Anthony Weldon was a member of King James Court, but he was an English member, not a Scottish member. This guy was a racist to the max. He absolutely hated Scots. You would not see a difference. I might not even see a difference. Here's what he said about the Scots. He wrote a book. He was anti-Scottish, never hesitated to make his feelings known. He wrote a treatise entitled A Perfect Description of the People and Country of Scotland. All right, so he's telling you, this is an English guy, I'm telling you isn't this be kind of like Custer writing about Indians? All right? I mean, wouldn't you say, now hold it just a second. Why are you listening to him? Why don't you listen to what we got to say? Correct? All right? I have it here. It said that's equivalent of a KKK member writing a definitive history of the African people. This thing was printed. It was printed in 1659. Note that is way after James is dead. And here's what he said. First, quote, first of the country. He's telling you about the country of Scotland. I must confess, it is too good for those that possess it, and too bad for others to be at charge to conquer it. He said the people that live there, the land is too good for them, but it ain't good enough for us to go up there and take it away from them. The air might be wholesome, but for the stinking people that inhabit it. That's what he thought of Scots. Their discourse are full of distraction. Their sermons, nothing but railing. And their conclusions, nothing but heresies and treasons. Fornication, they hold but as a pastime. He said they're just all a bunch of fornicators. They're immoral. They're illicit. This is what he thought of. This is what he thought of his king. This is what he thought of his king's court. Fornication they hold but a pastime, wherein man's ability is approved. At adultery they shake their heads. Murder they wink at. And blasphemy they laugh at. Their flesh naturally abhors cleanliness. Their breath commonly stinks of pottage. Their linen of piss. Their hands of pigs. What comes naturally, to be chained in marriage to one of them were to be tied to a dead carcass. He said if a woman marries a Scot, it's like being chained to a dead carcass and cast into a stinking ditch. I do wonder that King James should be born in so stinking of town as Edinburgh in lousy Scotland. So Anthony Weldon, now guys, do you think a guy with that kind of an opinion of Scots, in a court of Scots, with a king that is Scottish, do you think he's going to get along very well? You know what happened to him? He was put out of the court. That'd be like firing one of the cabinet members. He was put out of the court, but wait a minute, you have to understand, you know what that meant? That meant he's now got to get a job for a living. That meant his children are not going to have the benefits of being a member of the court. I mean, this guy has now become a commoner. And you know what he said? I will get vengeance on King James. He swore vengeance on King James. And so he is the one that made the charge that King James was a homosexual. And you know when he did it? 25 years after he was dead. Now, if you think that's okay, why don't you drop dead? And then 25 years from now, I'll have somebody write a book about you and say that you were homosexual. It's not fair. Absolutely, it's not fair. Weldon was a member of James' court. He was bitter that most of the positions of the court were held by Scots. Eventually, his hatred led James to dismiss him from the court. A sizable demotion in prestige, wealth, and power. Weldon swore that he would have vengeance on James. He waited until 1650, 25 years after James' death. He wrote a treatise in which he alluded that to King James having a homosexual relationship with George Villiers. George Villiers was a Scot. He was one of the members of the court. Get this. The rumor never gained traction. You know why? Because even 25 years after he was dead, that would be like trying to say Ronald Reagan was a homosexual. There's too many people to remember him. And we'd say, oh, he was not. But now you go 4 centuries later to the 20th century. The rumor never gained traction again until being resurrected in the 20th century by anti-King James advocates who would use any tactic, no matter how low, to destroy the standing of James and his Bible. Well, wait a second. How do you know he wasn't homosexual? First off, the charge is not that he was homosexual. The charge is that he was an open homosexual. That his relationship with Villiers was known by anybody, everybody. By the way, there's never been a second voice to say he was homosexual. Now, I got news for you. You ever hear everybody say this? Well, everybody knows that. Well, then how come you're the only one saying it? Where's the second voice? Where's the second witness? Why aren't there a dozen people that when Anthony Weldon said King James is a homosexual, why weren't there a bunch of people who said, well, yeah, we knew that, but man, when he was alive, we wanted to kill us. No one said amen to his charge. Here's why you know he wasn't homosexual. Number one, public reaction. If James had been a homosexual, he would have been driven from the throne and probably killed. They would not. You think the Presbyterian Church is going to put up with that in Scotland? You think the Church of England is going to put up with it? Public reaction would have been bad. The public outcry. If James had been a homosexual, history books would have been full of letters, tracts, and books written against his sin. Now, guys, maybe somebody in the court would have been quiet if they knew it, but you think those preachers at the time would have done it? You think somebody wouldn't have said, hey, we got a king that's a queer? But nobody said it. There was no public outcry. Upstanding citizens would have written these while James was on the throne and alive. They wouldn't have cried, God save the king. They would have demanded, God kill this king. What about the Puritans? It was the Puritans that came over here in 1620 and founded Jamestown. Jamestown? Who do you reckon that was named for? That they did it while he was on the throne. The Puritans were very strict in adhering to biblical principles and morals. No Puritan would have agreed to help a pervert king translate the Bible. The Puritans worked on the King James Bible. The Anglicans, the monarch of England, king or queen, is automatically the head of the Church of England. The Church of England of the 17th century would never have allowed the head of their church to be a homosexual. One of the things you got to remember. This is a little bit of a theory, okay? But it's an answer to a question that I get. I get this. Guys, there were, before the King James Bible, there were several English Bibles, Bishop's Bible, Tyndale's Bible, Coverdale's Bible, Bishop's Bible, Geneva Bible, etc., and Matthew's Bible. And I've had people say, why weren't one of those the English Bible? Why have to be the King James? Well, obviously I can't tell you. And I can't tell you. But I got two things. Number one, this language. This language was still in flux up to about 1600. Prior to 1600, there were some, you know what you think? You think because of these and thous that the English or your King James Bible is Old English? No. It is modern English. I was over there in Ireland and I saw this road sign and they had a bunch of letters, but it looked like they fell on the floor and somebody got them in the wrong order. It was like, Gaelic, look. And I said, what is that? They said, it's Gaelic. Well, if you saw Old English, and I have an example of Old English and Middle English. English is three parts. Old English, Middle English, Modern English. If you saw Old English, you could not read it. It's very much like me looking at your Navajo hymnal. You got the right letters. I don't know what you did with them. But Middle English. In Middle English, you still couldn't read it, but you might look at a word and say, I think that's the word for this. So you might pick up a word, but still, you could not read. I could not read Middle English. The King James Bible is one of the first Bibles in modern English. These and thous, it's not Old English. It's modern English. And so the language was not ready until about 1600, so that's why in 1604 it got going. But every Bible prior to the King James was this. It was a one-man translation or a one-group translation. You had the Tyndale Bible. Well, guess who did that one? Tyndale. Coverdale Bible. William Tyndale was murdered before he could finish his Bible. And so Miles Coverdale took what Tyndale had done and finished the translation. And so the Coverdale is Coverdale's completion of the Tyndale Bible. But They were a one-man translation. Then you got the Bishop's Bible, which was geared to the Church of England. You had the Geneva Bible. Now here's what you got to remember, guys. Anglicans and Puritans. Okay, if you want to think about this, think this. Whoa. Think Democrats and Republicans. Really, that'll get your thinking straight. Okay, the Geneva Bible was a Puritan Bible. You know who rejected that? Well, the Anglicans, of course. The Bishop's Bible was an Anglican Bible. Well, guess who rejected that? The Puritans. Every Bible prior to the King James was either done for the Anglicans or done for the Puritans. Do you know who translated the King James Bible? Anglicans and Puritans. That's like the Democrats and Republicans getting together. But you know what that meant? All right, number one, first off, in fact, it was one of the first Bibles done by a committee. And I don't think highly of committees, but they actually got the job done right. Our Constitution worked that way. But because the Anglicans were there, look, I'm going to tell you something, guys. There were Anglicans on the King James Translation Committee that would have just as soon burned the guys they were working with as translate a Bible with them. But you know what the Anglicans' presence did? Kept it from becoming a Puritan translation. You know what the Puritans did? Kept it from becoming an Anglican translation. So the King James Bible is the first English Bible when English, the language, was finally solidified. And it was the first English Bible that was not a one-man or one-group translation. It was for everybody. The Bible translators. The translation committee was made up of Puritans and Anglicans. Although the Puritans were the more Bible-oriented of the two groups, neither would have accepted a blatant homosexual's request to translate the most holy of books. If King James was a homosexual, would they have stated, now think about this, if he was a homosexual, do you think that the dedicatory would say, "Great and manifold were the blessings, most dread sovereign, which Almighty God, the Father of mercies, bestowed upon us, the people of England, when first He set your Majesty's royal person to rule and reign over us"? You think they'd have said that about a homosexual? Not on your life. The colonists. Do you think the colonists, the guys that started Jamestown, would have written this? In the name of God, amen, we whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord King James, by the grace of God of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, King, defender of the faith, a homosexual, and having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith and honor of a homosexual king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern part of Virginia. You think they'd have said that about homosexual? Do you think they'd have named it Jamestown? There's another one. You know why he went homosexual? Because of God. Now, guys, say what you want. The King James Bible is the Bible that went around the world. There's a little bit of a lie being taught by a group out there, a group of Calvinists. They're pushing a Bible that they call the Geneva 1599. It's actually the Geneva 2006. And if you get one, it says 1599 on it. If you read the introduction, it says this is a reproduction of a 2006 updated 1599. And here's what these guys say. They say the Geneva Bible was the Bible that the Puritans had when they came off the Mayflower in 1620. That is true. The Geneva Bible was the Puritan, it was the preferred version of the Puritans. Now, let me just give you a sidebar, because these guys are saying this, well, the King James is good, the Geneva was before that, and that's what the Puritans used. Yeah, guess what? In 1604, do you know who was telling King James we want a New English translation and get rid of the Geneva? The Puritans. So why are you going to use a Bible that the Puritans had rejected clear back then in 1604? So it was the Bible that came off the Mayflower. But then they lie. And they say that the Geneva was the Bible that the United States was founded on. Guys, The last Geneva Bible, if I'm not mistaken, was printed in 1655. The United States declared its independence in 1776. That means the newest Bible, the newest Geneva Bible, was 120 years old. You think Americans run around with 120-year-old Bibles in hand? No. No, I'm going to tell you what Bible was our Bible. It was the King James. That's the Bible this country was founded on. The Geneva was the Bible of the Puritans. The King James was the Bible that our country was founded on. The King James Bible is the Bible that took the gospel around the world. Now, you tell me, a homosexual has a Bible translated and God is going to say, I'm going to use it? Not in your life. Foreign missions were inaugurated from England, and the Bible used this book. God used this book to carry His gospel around the world. There were several great translations before it. The Bishop's Bible, the Great Bible, the Geneva Bible. God could have used any one of them, but He chose the Bible of humble King James. If King James was indeed a homosexual, then he was an abomination to God. God would not use the Bible of a pervert to build one of the greatest political empires in history and evangelize the world. So guys, you say, well, why don't you give us some Bible? You need to know about this guy. Because all you're going to get, and look, I've got more information on him than you're going to find anyplace else. That is from the 24-hour seminar. I have got a chapter in the Understandable History that's an entire chapter about King James. There's some more information. Some of this is not in there, but there is some stuff in the Understandable History that is not in these notes. Guys, King James was one of the greatest individuals in history. I want to tell you this, and I'll be done. I want to tell you about three great men in history. Now, guys, you know, you can put these values if you want. You don't have to value them. But let me tell you this guy right here. George Washington. He's known as the first president. He's known as the father of our country. Do you know why he's known as the father of our country? All right. We were under a monarchy, were we not? The monarchy of England. With the revolution, we broke free of England. And do you know what the leaders of this country said to George Washington right after the revolution was over? Let's put you on the throne as King George the First. They offered George Washington to be the first king of this country. And he said, we just fought a war to get rid of that kind of government. I will not have. Do you understand that it's not a democracy, it's a representative republic. And this nation is a representative republic. You know why representative republic is important to you? Because you're a minority. Democracy is majority rule. They wouldn't care about your opinion, but in a representative republic, you're represented. So, Washington, you know why he is important to us? He is the one, if he chose, he would have been a king, and we'd have King Barack the First. I think we still may have King Barack the First. But this man we owe that to. There's another guy. Oh, the South hates this, but Abraham Lincoln. You say, what did he do? He preserved the Union. You know what Abraham Lincoln knew? He said, we've got to preserve the Union. Here's what the devil saw. If this country ever goes from sea to sea and border to border, this country, it was a godly country. It was the only country founded on the Bible. And if this country becomes a world power, it is going to take the Bible around the world. Guys, we did that. This nation carried the gospel even farther and more completely than England or Europe did. And so when the South split, I had people say, well, if the South would have won, there'd be two great nations. No, there wouldn't. I don't know if you realize this, but toward the end of the Civil War, the South, Virginia, was thinking about seceding from the Confederacy. But not only that, many other states never would have joined the United States or the Confederate States. And the United States would have broke up again, and the Confederate States would have broke up again. And you know what you'd have had over here? You'd have had a United States of Europe. This would have been just like Europe. It had never been the world power for good. And I say this about our country. I know what it is today. But this country has been benevolent to every nation on this planet, including the ones that hate us. Yes, sir. And so this guy, look, this man touched your life by letting us be a free country. This guy kept it together. And this guy. King James. You say, why? He gave us our Bible. You know what this guy did? This guy loaded the gun that missionaries have taken around the world. Those are three of the most important men in history, and you'll ever only get the first two. And you go to England today, and they got statues of all the great kings, and there's not one statue of King James. Do you know what? Listen, when I was in Scotland, outside of John Knox's church, John Knox is the one that made Scotland a Presbyterian nation, took it from the Catholic Church. He was one of the greatest preachers in Scotland and in history. Do you know where his grave is? It is a yellow square about that big, just a yellow square in a parking spot on the asphalt outside the church. When I was there, it was parking spot number 23. You had black asphalt, yellow lines, and in one of them it had a yellow square. Each parking spot is numbered, and in parking spot 23 is one yellow square. It's not found in the other. They paved over his grave and put a parking lot there. That's how Scotland said thank you. You know how England said thank you? They buried him in the floor of a building, and there's a little plaque about that big that says, you're standing on King James. There's no statues. This is the guy that put together the foundation of the British Empire. This is the guy that gave them their flag. This is the guy that gave them their Bible. And they hate him to this day. And he was one of the most moral men that ever walked the planet. That's the King James of your Bible. Don't let anybody tell you anything different. Let's have a word of prayer. Father, thank you for your goodness and thank you for your grace. And thank you, God, for King James. I don't just mean the Bible King James. I mean the man King James. God, I feel so bad for him that he's gotten such bad press. I've read things, God, where he was concerned about winning people to Christ. Lord, help these men to understand that they can be proud. This guy was a man's man. He was a hunter, but he was moral and he was virtuous and he was honest. He was clean. He was a man of peace. He was a man that the world ought to use as one of the greatest examples of men that ever walked. But because he's the guy that gave us our Bible, God, he gets all the bad press or no press whatsoever. But help us to be loyal to this book that you gave us through him. And help us, Father, honor his heritage. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. Just before I finish, are there any questions? Okay, let's take a break and let's eat.
You got something on even his name. The Lord waited till the name James came along.
Well, yeah, you can say that. You know, one of the things you have to be careful of. I'm trying to be careful not to ascribe something that wasn't there. Like people say this, Psalm 12, verse 6 and 7, the words of the Lord are pure words, the silver tried and furnished verse 7 times. I've had guys say, well, that's because there were 7 English Bibles before the King James, and it's the 7th. Well, I had a guy, I read a book for this Aussie one time, this Australian, and he subscribed to that. I don't subscribe to that. And he had these 7 Bibles with the King James as the number 7th. You know what he had as number, one of them? The Gutenberg of 1456. Well, that was Latin. But here, if you get rid of Gutenberg, now you got 6, right? And you need 7. So I scratched out Gutenberg. I said, you can't put this in here. It wasn't English, it was Latin. Then I wrote 2 more English translations before the King James, and I said, pick one of these, and then you'll have 7. So we try to say that. Yes, I know they say James is Jacob. That's what he's saying. Jacob is the supplanter. Did God wait for that? I don't know. But are there coincidences with God? No, there's not. So may well be that it was that name Jacob because he was the supplanter. But this is, guys, this is amazing. This is amazing that this guy was sandwiched right between a Roman Catholic and a Roman Catholic. And they got a Protestant, and that guy gave the world a Bible that absolutely altered the world. It really did. It really did. Let me just tell you this. You know, sometimes you hear guys talk about, they try to guilt trip you. Remember I told you in lieu of conviction, intimidation? And so they'll say this. I read this book written by a pastor, and And he was trying to guilt trip people about missions, and he said, "We failed at the Great Commission. I'm here to tell you we've succeeded at it." That doesn't mean we quit. There they are. That doesn't mean we quit. There's still countries we can start churches here. But I have a book called "They Found the Church There." It was written in 1945, and it was about sailors who were either aviators and shot down and washed up on an island, or their boat was sunk. And here's what happens. This guy washes up, man. He's sunk. His boat sunk. He's barely he's worn out from fighting to stay alive. He passes out on the beach, and he wakes up, and here's this native with this bushy hair and a bone in his nose and a machete looking at him. And he's thinking, uh-oh. And the native says, "Come on, I'll take you to the missionary." They were all over, brother. It were 7 sailors, World War II sailors. They were on an island. These 2 natives said, "Come on, we'll take you to the missionary." And this guy said, they got us in a swamp that we knew we were at their mercy, and we were really getting scared until while we were in the middle of that swamp, they started whistling "Onward, Christian Soldiers." Guys, we have taken missions around the world. We really have. Look, I'll give you this. Do you know why people always used to talk about going to Tahiti and Fiji? Well, that's because they're nice places. All them islands are nice. You know what the Fijians used to do? They ate you, but they didn't kill you. They'd cut your arm off and eat it in front of you. They'd take a hook and pull your tongue out, snip it off, cut it, say, "Want some?" They'd cut your legs off and eat them. Then they would kill you. And here's what happened. The Hawaiians went to a Bible college in Connecticut in the 1800s and said, "You don't care about our people." And 1 year later, missionaries went to Hawaii. The Hawaiians got saved. They sent missionaries to Tahiti. The Tahitians got saved. We're going to go to Fiji. They slew the Tahitians, but they finally won 90%. Now, I'm going to tell you this, guys. You're watching history happen again. I'm going to tell you something about Indians. I'll tell you about Fiji. The Fijians, in 90 years, 90%, there were 90,000 people on that island, 90% of them were saved. You say, then why do we send missionaries there now? Because when the British took it over, they brought in 85,000. Now, there's 90,000 people on the island. They doubled the size of the island. They brought in 85,000 Hindu servants. They imported heathenism. It was an anti-Christian culture. All right, now let me tell you about Indians. 5 Indians left Washington area, Spokane area. They came down to St. Louis. They looked up Meriwether Lewis of Lewis and Clark fame. They said, "Send somebody to our people to give us the gospel." By the time they got to St. Louis, 2 of them already died. You know what Meriwether Lewis was a great explorer. He wasn't saved. He showed them St. Louis. He took them to these great cathedrals. Look at this. This is what it must be what you want. And when they were done, the guy that was in charge said this. He said, "We will go back to our people." And he said, "They will meet in the council, and they will stand by the fire, and we will tell them that you showed us your great buildings and your great churches and your great civilization. And then one by one, they will get up and they will leave because they will know you sent us no one to tell us about Jesus." By the time they got back, only one guy was alive. But here's what you missed. 1 year later, a guy named Whitman, Hiram Whitman, went out to Spokane and founded a mission to the Indians. So what I'm saying, guys, is we have fulfilled the Great Commission. But this nation was founded on the Bible. I don't know if you realize this. It's probably not a true demographic now, but up to 20 years ago, this was not just a Christian nation, but the largest denomination was Baptist. Now, what would happen if this happened? The policeman comes to your door, knocks on your front door, and says, "Hey, I got to tell you something. Look across the street." And across the street, your neighbor, he's got his shotgun in his hand, and he's shaking his fist at you. And the policeman says, "Watch out for him. He said he's going to kill you. And we'll try to patrol here, but we can't be here 24 hours a day. You have to take care of yourself." You know what you say? "Oh, yeah? You go to the house, get your shotgun, you take your chair, you put it on the porch, and you sit there and say, 'Try it, pal.'" And right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And you sit there for 70 years. And then he dies. You said, "I kept him out." And you turn around and walk back in your house and you find out that while you were watching him across the street, somebody came in the back door and cleaned you out. For 70 years, they told us this. The news media said, watch out for the Soviet Union. The communists are going to kill you. So we watched them. Boy, you push a button, we'll push a button. You kill us, we'll kill you. And while we sat on our front porch and watched them for 70 years, the Immigration Nationalization Service opened up the back door and brought in huge numbers of anything but Christians. Listen, the Cuba boat lift of 1958, Catholics. 1982, Catholics. Vietnam, Catholics, Buddhists, all the Hindus that came in. Why? I'm over there in Gallup. How come you've got a Muslim mosque in the middle of a Navajo reservation? You telling me 2 Muslims came out here and won that many converts? Not in your life. And so they used the lesson of Fiji. This nation was Christian and clean, and we've had to import our crime, our disease, and our heathen. Now the problem is, they won. I don't know that it could be turned back around. I really don't. But I'm telling you, we have fulfilled the Great Commission. That does not mean somebody shouldn't come out here and have another mission in Indians. That does not mean somebody shouldn't start another church in Kansas. That doesn't mean somebody shouldn't go to China as a missionary. You understand? That doesn't abrogate us from our responsibility, but you don't have to guilt trip people and say they didn't do it. That whole book, we found the church there. Here's what one guy said. He said, because these guys were against their churches being in favor of foreign missions. And this kid said, "Dear Mom and Dad, I just want to let you know that today I was the guest at dinner instead of being dinner because of missions." So guys, we've done it. That doesn't mean we stop. We just keep going at it.